Now, the discussion of who the greatest characters in Naruto are is a very subjective one that raises a lot of debate and opinions, and Naruto in general has a strong cast. So many different names will pop up, be that the prodigious geniuses of Itachi and Minato, the two of whom have topped the popularity charts in the latest character popularity poll, and the both of them have a plethora of wank or glaze videos out there on the internet pertaining to both their powers and their character quality. Both Minato and Itachi also serve as the cool, righteous mystery characters that the MCs Naruto and Sasuke have to surpass. Both are also considered to be nearly perfect by the narrative. So Minato and Itachi are very popular choices for this title. There's also the Sannin, whom, while they don't have nearly as much swag or hype as the aforementioned two, are still considered well-written, entertaining characters that are very important for the lore. And more importantly, they had the strong parallel to Team 7 and have trained each member at a certain point. Might Guy and Rock Lee are also quite likable, and likely the two funniest characters in the verse, with Lee even getting his own spin-off comedy anime, and the list goes on and on with the rapping Jinchuriki Killer B, the mass murderer turned righteous leader Gaara, the two main rivals and founders of the village Hashirama Senju and Madara Uchiha, the artistic duo of Deidara and Sasori, and of course the likely two most popular characters of Naruto Uzumaki and Kakashi Hatake, the ideal symbols of what shinobi should be, the 6th and 7th Hokage that transformed the Leaf and ended the endless cycle of hatred that plagued the Leaf village for ages, the two individuals that didn't give in to despair, stood by the Leaf, and set an example for the next generation. All of the aforementioned characters are pretty great, don't get me wrong. However, in my opinion, the three who I consider to be the greatest characters, and this is probably gonna get me a lot of backlash, are none other than Pain, Sasuke, and Obito. Characters that made it nowhere near the top 5, and ones that carry much controversy behind them. But let me explain my reasonings as to why I consider them to be the greatest characters of the series, and some of the best in all of anime. And now before we begin, if you enjoy chill Naruto analysis type videos, then this may be your call to join the Jubitas community. We're growing every day and you do not want to miss out on what we've got to offer. And now, going back to the three characters that are the subject of our discussion today. When I say they are the greatest, I'm not just talking about their slick designs or their overwhelming powers or the aura that each one of these menaces radiated, or even all the cold moments that each one of them had, or the bars or cold one-liners that they dropped, or even how whenever one of these characters was on screen, they stole the show. I mean, those same qualities could apply to a lot of the aforementioned characters, but the reason that I consider these three to be the greatest characters of Naruto is because of their interactions with the title character himself, how their opposition to him tremendously shaped Naruto's character, made him question his surface level desires to become the Hokage and the shinobi system as a whole. And by extension, these three characters have helped move the plot the most. They're like the three main catalysts of Naruto Shippuden. And unlike say Danzo, another character who acts like a plot driver that creates a lot of necessary conflict in the story, these characters are portrayed in a much more sympathetic light. Their nihilism is shaped a lot more by their tragic backstories, and their negative experiences with the shinobi system causes them to truly reject or challenge it, unlike Danzo that instead reinforces everything that is wrong with that system. Danzo also doesn't ever have a face-to-face interaction with Naruto himself, and while I do believe that Danzo is more complex than people give him credit, I believe that the complexity and character quality behind Pain, Sasuke, and Obito is far greater. So the reason that I consider them to be the greatest characters that Shippuden has to offer is a combination of everything. Their backstories, their designs, their unique and powerful abilities, their aura, but most importantly, their ideological or philosophical opposition to the protagonist and their defiance against the shinobi order. How each one of them was a foil to Naruto Uzumaki, and how that in turn forced Naruto to re-evaluate his own beliefs and evolve his ideology, ultimately forging his own path to becoming the Hokage. And the role that each one of them plays makes them low-key the most goated characters in my eyes, and in the eyes of many of the Naruto fans as well. I know that most people already acknowledge that Pain is one of the most well-written characters, and he gets plenty of praise as a villain. Sasuke is a bit more contentious, though a lot of people, especially those that have rewatched and matured their opinions on the show, acknowledge what an incredible character he is. And then you have Obito, who's likely the most controversial, though like Sasuke, he's a character that has received a lot more appreciation from the fan base as the show has progressed. And now that I've laid down my point of view, let me go over each one of these characters individually in order to explain their interaction with Naruto and how significant or important it was to the series, and why that should solidify each as one of the most compelling and goated characters of the franchise. I'll start with the generally most liked one, Pain or Nagato, the child that was orphaned by the Leaf's proxy war, born into the war-torn nation of the Rain Village, who also happened to be the recipient of Madara's Rinnegan, which made him the subject of Jiraiya's prophecy. He believed that Nagato may be the revolutionary child of prophecy that the great elder Toad Sage told him about so long ago, an apprentice that was prophesied to bring about a great change to the ninja world, either great peace or destruction, the likes of which have never been seen before. It was rumored that the sage would reappear whenever the world becomes corrupt, which is why it made sense that the Rinnegan would manifest in the Hidden Rain. This is when Jiraiya took Nagato under his wing, and it's what made Pain such an effective foil to Naruto. Not only were they sibling students, but Jiraiya had entrusted the both of them with the quest of finding a way to break the cycle of hatred and achieve true peace. They were both the children of prophecy, essentially. However, Nagato on his own was an incomplete foil, as the Pain persona consisted of both Nagato and Yahiko, the dear friend that Nagato looked up to and took so much from, and someone whose outgoing personality was closer to Naruto's and defined the trio's dreams. He was an idealist, but he also had a dark side, one that Nagato would inherit. All three of those orphans have been subjected to immense trauma, and Yahiko believed that the only way for people to understand each other was to experience the same pain. Those that do not understand true pain can never understand true peace. Of course, under Jiraiya's guidance, that message had a more positive spin to it, one of compassion and mutual understanding. And after Jiraiya left, Nagato put his disdain aside and followed Yahiko's idealistic vision of the Akatsuki, the peacekeeping troop whose goal was to cease the endless conflicts that plagued the Rain Village. However, their comrades kept on dying, and the final straw was when Yahiko was devoured by a brutal conspiracy, all because of his naivete, his blind trust in the good of others. That was when Nagato gave up on this unrealistic way of thinking. He had to grow up, and he decided to implement Yahiko's message in a different way. If the great nations were just going to ignore all the pain they inflicted upon the smaller nations, he was gonna forcibly inflict that pain onto them, and only then would they truly understand what pain was and be forced to gravitate towards real peace. He was still trying to fulfill Jiraiya Sensei's request. He believed that this drastic measure was the only way to break the cycle of hatred, because this cold and hateful world wasn't gonna listen unless it was forced to. And that's why when Pain said his famous speech to Naruto, he shattered his worldview and left him speechless. Naruto always yapped about how he wanted to bring peace to the shinobi world, but he never really thought deep about what that really meant. And now he felt like a fraud because Pain was low-key correct. Naruto at that very moment wanted to enact the same vengeance that Pain was enacting against the village. And if he followed his instincts, he wasn't gonna bring about any real peace. He was just gonna become part of the cycle. This was Naruto's biggest challenge yet, not just physically, but ideologically as well. This was also the moment that made Naruto challenge the biased narrative that he'd been fed about the Leaf Village most of his life, and made him look at the shinobi world from a different perspective. After his confrontation with the real Pain, when Naruto decided to forgive him, he decided to incorporate the lessons he learned from him into his quest. It was thanks to Pain that Naruto became more nuanced. That's why he didn't just give up on Sasuke after he heard about his attack on the cloud. Pain also played a pivotal role in the overall story story's plot when he fought and killed Jiraiya, since that was the first time that Naruto truly experienced loss and could relate to Sasuke, and also Pain's role as the leader of the Akatsuki and its origins was significant. But like I already said, I don't have to justify how well written his character is that much since he's already acknowledged as such. If you want to hear more about him, then I highly recommend my Why Pain Was Right video, because now we have to move on to a more polarizing figure, that being the true leader of the Akatsuki. And now, I think people have grown to appreciate Obito's character more over the years, but you'll still get a lot of trolls that try to belittle or dismiss his entire character arc by just calling him a simp that started a war over a girl that couldn't care less about him. And now, I already tackled a lot of this in my Why Do People Hate Obito video, so I won't entertain these oversimplified notions here. However, one thing that even the Obito haters will agree upon is that before the mask came off, he was easily the most intriguing and entertaining character in the show. An enigmatic presence that had a hand in most of the major events, the mastermind that gave us some of the best moments in the series, and possessed an ability that made him seem like he was invincible. Even when he was behaving like a buffoon, he still had everyone asking questions. Who's this jackass? And how'd he manage to get into the Akatsuki? And then the role he plays afterwards is even more narratively rich, and shows how much his presence elevates the story, and how he ties to the two other characters in this video. The true leader behind the scenes that was giving orders to Pain, the one that revealed the truth behind the Uchiha clan massacre to Sasuke. Obito's also the one that bridges the final arc of the story by introducing the idea of the infinite Tsukuyomi and declaring war against the 5 great nations, which was the first time that the great nations actually stood together, highlighting the existing issues and inner conflicts that were present in the shinobi world. There's no denying his relevance or importance to the plot. However, that's something that most already agreed upon. The issue lies after his mask comes off and we find out that it was Obito all along. There's a lot of people that find his reasons for becoming a villain insufficient, that apparently he did all that he did just for Rin. Despite him denying this notion verbatim, I guess these people miss the entire point of what Obito represents. He was the kid that always took the L, always saw the worst that life had to offer. Despite him always trying to be the good guy, trying to help the elderly, and valuing teamwork above all else, but he was never enough to live up to the elite Uchiha name, always got outdone by Kakashi, and then sacrificed himself to save his rival, failing to save the both of them, and then watched his rival go off with his crush while he was left there to rot under the influence of this notorious madman that knew all about how the Sharingan worked and was looking for someone to take his place as the savior of the world. In order for Madara to convince Obito to follow his path, he had to sell him the Eye of the Moon plan. And the way to do that was to make him lose hope in the current reality, since the Tsukuyomi world was the ideal alternative. And making him lose hope was an easy task because frankly, the shinobi world was already hellish. And that fact was even more exacerbated for the child soldier left to rot underground with half his body crushed. And a lot of tone-deaf haters will say, oh, that didn't matter to him at all. Of course it mattered. How could it not? It may have not seemed as obvious to some, but Obito hinged all of his hopes of this reality onto rehabilitating himself and escaping this underground hellhole and reuniting with Kakashi and Rin, after having his mind constantly poisoned by Madara and by the Zetsu he kept around babysitting him. So when he watched her die, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. That's when he started to view this reality through a negative lens. And the shinobi world was already objectively awful as is. And as he walked in Madara's shoes, that just reaffirmed his beliefs. It was an unfair world where if you're unlucky, like Obito and Rin, or Nagato and the Rain Orphans, or even Sasuke and the Uchiha clan, then you would bear the blunt of the unjustness of the shinobi system so that others got to live a normal life. For there to be a concept of winners, there had to be losers. However, that wouldn't be the case in a dream world where everyone got to live their ideal life. So Obito believed that this was the one and only way for everyone to be a winner. Then, all of his actions in this world didn't matter. It was hell anyways. Because the final result, the infinite Tsukuyomi, would lead to the overall greater good for everyone. It was his pessimism and nihilism that did him in. And then we get to the parallelism between him and Naruto, which Obito is actually the character that is the best foil to Naruto. His whole character is centered around being the Naruto that lost hope, from his old aspirations to becoming the Hokage, his prioritization of teamwork, and even his outfit as a kid. Naruto was a replica of the old him, and this parallelism extends even further with the symbolism of the Sage of the Six Paths, how Obito managed to achieve control over the tailed beast's powers in his 10 tails form and called himself the second coming of the Sage, in contrast to how Naruto was getting compared to the Sage in how he unified the tailed beasts and they all willingly gave him a piece of their chakra. That's why Naruto triggered Obito so much and tried to break him and lashed out by killing Neji and all those other shinobi, because he couldn't stand the idea that the identity he rejected and the ideals he abandoned, or the right path, was possible all along. He wanted to prove to himself that he made the right choice and that Naruto would eventually succumb to the darkness like he did, even if it surmounted to lying to himself. And it was when Naruto was able to see through all of that he managed to get through to Obito, and it's what led to the infamous Talk no Jutsu. Naruto recognized that Obito used to be just like him, but unlike how Naruto always had someone in his corner during his lowest moments, Obito only had Madara and Zetsu. Naruto could have turned out just like Obito if Iruka wasn't there to defend him from Mizuki, or if his father's projection wasn't there to prevent him from going full Nine Tails mode, or if Hinata wasn't there to slap some sense into him after Neji's death. This is what also reinforced Naruto's ideals of cooperation and working with others, because it was those around him that prevented him from falling into the darkness and becoming just like Obito. And that's why Obito turns on Madara and helps the protagonists after Naruto appealed to the optimist that was buried deep inside of him. And it's likely what makes Obito such a controversial character, just because of how dynamic he is and how he keeps changing throughout the show, almost as if that's a bad trait somehow, when in reality it makes him one of, if not the most complex character in the show. And then the Obito haters will even bring up Naruto calling him the coolest guy, when Obito himself rejected that idea and called himself irredeemable. But Naruto wasn't calling Obito's entire journey that of a cool guy's, rather he was calling the Obito that had the courage to change course after having spent 17 years on the wrong path cool. For someone that far gone to admit to his faults and turn around, that's what Naruto considered to be awesome. All the wrongdoings Obito committed against Naruto were necessary for him to get to where he is, and Obito also highlighted how dark his life could have been had it not been for the people that cared about him. And just the array of personas he portrayed, the fights, emotions, and everything that Obito brings makes him a goated character in my eyes. If you guys want to hear more about him, then I got another one, my Was Obito Right video, because now that we've saved the best for last, let's look at the main deuteragonist of the manga. The first and final foil for Naruto, Sasuke Uchiha. Sasuke is arguably the character that moves the plot the most, adds spice to the story, and motivates the MC Naruto to grow through every step. From as far back as when they were kids in the academy, despite the fact that they were opposites in many regards, Sasuke being the top of the class and Naruto being the bottom, they were also the same in the sense that they were both alone. Though of course, the principal difference is that Naruto was alone from the very start. He didn't understand Sasuke just yet. He wanted to reach out to him and befriend him, but he decided to make him his rival instead. He set his sights on Sasuke. And in that regard, given the fact that the title character was always chasing Sasuke, that makes Sasuke arguably the most impactful when it comes to driving the narrative. It was Sasuke's belittling scaredy cat comment that he dropped after saving Naruto that inspired Naruto to take an oath to never be afraid and run away, and to never lose to Sasuke. And then Naruto pays him back in the Forest of Death when he saves him from Orochimaru's snake, and in turn also awakens Sasuke's drive and reminds him of the important quest that he had as the last survivor of the Uchiha clan. If he couldn't take on this freak, he'd never be able to get revenge against his elder brother. This rivalry was a healthy one at first that pushed both boys to the apex of their abilities, but it got more toxic after Sasuke's encounter with Itachi, where Itachi exacerbated Sasuke's already severe trauma and put him under a Tsukuyomi so intense that he was left comatose. Sasuke wasn't like the rest. He was burdened with a heavy task of avenging his clan from his monstrous elder brother, and to get folded by him this badly, and to watch his rival that was once below him surpass him while he stagnated. Naruto outshone him in the Gaara fight, and his Rasengan turned out to be much more potent than anything in Sasuke's arsenal. All that left Sasuke conflicted. He did care about his new team, but his brother taunted him about how weak he was, like he didn't grow at all from the time of the massacre, when he was too weak to do anything. He felt like a failure, like his goal was never gonna be achieved if he didn't take drastic measures. And that's why Sasuke decided to abandon the village and join Orochimaru. And this also leads to the first final valley battle, one of the most iconic in all of anime, and one that led Naruto to go off for 2 years to train with Jiraiya. Now going back to Sasuke, who goes through significant character growth, this Sasuke is a lot more calm and rational, and he also has a strict moral code. That's why he defeated all of the goons that Orochimaru sent without killing a single one, because they're not the ones that he wanted to kill. He only saved that for Itachi, or for those that resembled Itachi in how they toyed with others' lives, like Orochimaru, or those that were acting as an obstacle to him in his quest, like Team 7. Despite having cherished them in the past, Sasuke now viewed those bonds as a hindrance or distraction if one had a serious challenging goal like he did. And by completely outclassing Naruto, he motivated him to continue along with his training. This Naruto lacked the resolve that Sasuke had. This version of Sasuke was at the peak of his character arc. He could have gone back to Konoha a hero if he wanted, and he also gave us the most anticipated fight of the entire series that was foreshadowed and built up from the very beginning. But then of course, we were hit with the biggest plot twist when the truth about Itachi is revealed by another goated character. This is when Naruto and Sasuke's roles were reversed, and Naruto reached his highest point by becoming acknowledged as the hero of the Leaf, and Sasuke's at his lowest point, morally speaking at least, when he gets consumed by his hatred and borderline loses his mind. Sasuke becomes so infuriated by how he can't find an object to fixate his hatred onto, which causes him to spiral out of control and lash out against anyone that stood in his way, even someone that was with him every step of the way, like Karin. And the controversy he causes makes him one of the realest and most compelling characters. Sasuke was a real victim of the curse of hatred, shaped by the lies and deception and trauma. His descent to darkness makes complete sense, and he was so overtaken with his emotions that acting rationally was the last thing on his mind. And Naruto acknowledged that. Thanks to another goated character that he'd confronted in the last arc, he knew that Sasuke wasn't acting like that for no reason. And since he made a promise to mend the cycle of hatred, he told Sasuke to store all of his hatred for him because Naruto was the only one that could handle it. And Sasuke remains the same revenge-driven teenager until he meets the reanimated Itachi, and Itachi apologizes to Sasuke and tells him that he doesn't ever have to forgive him. This made Sasuke calm down a bit, and now he wanted to understand this village that his brother gave everything for. And when he revived the former Hokage, and got the first Hashirama Senju to explain to him the reasoning behind the founding of the village, after that Sasuke made up his mind. He had the same qualms about the shinobi system as Pain and Obito. He knew that it was hell and that it had to be changed. So when Naruto teamed up with him again, the both of them knew that they were gonna duke it out in the end. Sasuke wasn't done with the Leaf Village, and meanwhile Naruto had achieved enlightenment and wasn't gonna allow Sasuke to harm any of the current shinobi for what they may have done in the past. And this is when the reincarnate thing comes into play again, which I know a lot of people dislike, but the whole conflict between Naruto and Sasuke was always the clash of the two ideologies. Sasuke, like Indra, believed that there was strength in solitude, that bonds only held one back, and that him alone, with the powers he amassed, could dismantle the problematic shinobi system that caused everyone so much harm. While Naruto, like Ashura, believed that the bonds he created were the reason he made it as far as he did, that the people around him helped him in his path. He learned from Obito what could have happened if he walked that path alone, but he also learned from Nagato about the cycle of hatred, and how it was necessary to address the root cause of the pain of others in order to reach a mutual understanding. So his final solution boiled down to how he did understand Sasuke and acknowledged his pain, but you just didn't want to see him go through it alone. That's why he pictured Sasuke next to him in the end, and eventually Sasuke folds. But it was only Naruto that could get Sasuke to change his mind. It was Sasuke's constant opposition and changing goals that caused Naruto to evolve, to adapt his ideology, and understand the world around him. And the clash of their ideologies and fists is both iconic and is the essence of the entire franchise. And yeah, this has been the bulk of today's video. I decided to focus on the roles that these three antagonists or anti-heroes had in influencing Naruto's path, or the effect that their opposition had on his goals, to highlight how important they were to the plot. And in general, all three of these characters play very effective roles as opponents or foils to Naruto. They also have very impressive powers and sick designs, moments, and speeches. Honestly, Naruto wouldn't be half as dope or interesting of a manga without them, especially Sasuke, since he's very pivotal to the plot. And I know acknowledging Sasuke and Obito as the greatest characters in Naruto is gonna get me a lot of hatred in the comments, but frankly, I don't care. I'm done pretending like they didn't have some of the greatest moments in the series. Like I said, they are both very dynamic and they keep changing, so I suppose it makes sense why they're so controversial. Pain, on the other hand, is quite fairly reviewed though. And now, these three characters are definitely not the only great characters, because like I said, Shippuden does have a very strong roster. Naruto Uzumaki in himself is a great character, and despite what a lot of people say, I do think he's a lot more complex than they think. But a lot of people do find him almost too idealistic. That's why morally complex foils like Pain, Obito, and Sasuke have a wide appeal with others in the fanbase. And you don't have to agree. Obviously, this is my personal take, but I believe that with their plot significance, designs, powers, backstories, these three are simply GOATs in my eyes. And I have a lot of individual analysis videos on each one of them, so make sure to check them out if you want a complete video on Sasuke, Pain, or Obito. I've linked them all in the description. And other than that, I guess I'll see you guys when we're at that 10k. Crazy. Anyways, peace out. Bye.